You have 5 minutes to clean up. My wife's sister, the CEO, fired me in front of all the leaders. I left and said, thank you. Immediately after that, 15 engineers stood up one by one, quietly following Emiya. Esney laughed arrogantly, until the legal director panicked and said, call a lawyer now. You know that moment when your entire world gets flipped upside down faster than a pancake at IHOP? Yeah, that's happening to me right now, sitting in this sterile boardroom that smells like overpriced coffee and corporate backstabbing. The mahogany table stretches out like a runway for my professional execution, and I'm the star of this twisted show. The sharp snap of that manila folder cuts through the silence like a gunshot. Everyone's pretending to study their laptops, but I can feel their eyes burning holes through my skull. They're waiting for the fireworks, the meltdown, the dramatic exit that'll give them something juicy to whisper about at the water cooler for weeks. Sorry to disappoint, folks, but this isn't going to be that kind of show. Claudia Voss. Yeah, my wife's sister. The woman who used to borrow my Netflix password and complain about my choice in pizza toppings at family gatherings, sits at the head of the table like she's channeling some discount version of Anna Wintour. Her perfectly manicured fingers drum against the folder that apparently contains my professional death certificate. The irony isn't lost on me that the same hands that once fumbled with Christmas wrapping paper are now unwrapping my career like it's a clearance item at Target. You have 5 minutes to clean up, she declares, her voice colder than a polar bear's backside. 5 minutes. 6 years of my blood, sweat, and way too many energy drinks reduced to a bathroom break. The woman who couldn't figure out how to use the smart TV remote is giving me a countdown to pack up my life's work. The audacity is actually impressive, like watching a toddler try to run a Fortune 500 company. Oh wait, that's exactly what's happening. I can see the other executives trying not to make eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their phones like they've just discovered TikTok. Marcus Hale, the COO, is practically vibrating with second-hand embarrassment, while Sarah from marketing looks like she's about to cry into her oat milk latte. Even Harold Green, our legal director who usually has the personality of wet cardboard, seems uncomfortable with this public execution. The heat rushes to my face like I'm standing too close to a campfire, but I'll be damned if I give Claudia the satisfaction of seeing me crack. She wants a reaction? She wants me to throw a tantrum like some rejected contestant on a reality show? Not happening. I've got more class than that. Unlike some people who think designer suits can cover up their complete lack of qualifications. So instead of exploding like Mount Vesuvius, I lean back in my chair, the same chair where I've pitched game-changing ideas, solved impossible problems, and basically kept this company from becoming another Silicon Valley cautionary tale. I look directly at Claudia, watching her eyes narrow with that smug satisfaction that screams, I finally got you, you smug bastard. Little does she know, she's about to get a masterclass in how to handle corporate warfare with style. Thank you. I whisper, just loud enough for everyone to hear, but quiet enough to make them lean in. 2 simple words that apparently hit the room like a verbal hand grenade. The gasps ripple through the space like dominoes falling, and I have to bite back a smile because honestly, the dramatic timing is chef's kiss perfect. Claudia's smirk widens like the Cheshire cat who just caught the canary, mouse, and probably half the neighborhood pets. She thinks she's humiliated me in front of the entire executive team. She thinks this little power play has broken my spirit and sent me crawling back to whatever rock she assumes I came from. The poor, deluded woman has no idea she's just activated my trap card. But then, oh, and this is where it gets beautiful, Logan Martinez stands up. Just like that, chair scraping against the floor, laptop closing with a definitive snap. The kid I mentored when he was fresh out of MIT, scared of his own shadow and convinced he'd never amount to anything in the tech world. Now he's looking at Claudia like she's something he'd scrape off his shoe. One by one they rise. Priya Patel, our database genius who can make servers sing opera if she wants to. Dylan Chun, the security expert who's probably forgotten more about encryption than most people will ever learn. Sarah Kim, our UI wizard who makes interfaces so smooth they practically purr. 15 of them total, the core team that I've spent years building, training, and yeah, protecting from exactly this kind of corporate nonsense. They're not saying anything, they don't need to. Their loyalty speaks louder than any motivational poster or company retreat trust-building exercise ever could. These aren't just employees. They're my professional family, and watching them stand up for me is hitting me right in the feels harder than the series finale of The Office. The tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a butter knife. You could practically hear a pin drop, except for the sound of laptops closing and papers shuffling as my team gathers their stuff. It's like watching the world's most polite mutiny, and Claudia's expression is shifting from triumphant to confused to something that looks suspiciously like panic. She tries to recover with a laugh that sounds about as genuine as a $3 bill. "Oh, how touching," she says, voice dripping with the kind of sarcasm that would make a high school mean girl proud. A little solidarity tantrum. How very dramatic. But I can see the wheels turning behind her eyes, probably calculating how much of her precious company knowledge just walked out the door. That's when Harold Green shoots up from his chair like someone just told him the building was on fire. The man's face has gone whiter than a ghost in a snowstorm, and he's suddenly whispering something urgent in Claudia's ear that makes her confident expression crack like old paint. "Call a lawyer now," I catch him saying, and honestly, watching the realization dawn on their faces is better than Christmas morning. Because here's the thing they're all about to learn the hard way. I didn't just build the technical foundation of this company. I built the legal one too. And Claudia, in her infinite wisdom and stunning lack of preparation, just triggered every failsafe I put in place. As I stand up to leave, briefcase in hand and my team filing out behind me like we're the world's nerdiest motorcycle gang, I catch Claudia's eye one more time. That smug smirk is long gone, replaced by the dawning horror of someone who just realized they might have bitten off way more than they can chew. "See you around, sis," I say with a little wave, and walk out of that boardroom like I own the place. Which, as it turns out, I might just do after all. Walking out of that glass tower feels like escaping from corporate purgatory, except instead of feeling relieved, I'm carrying around this weight that sits on my chest like a sumo wrestler who's given up on his diet. My team trails behind me like we're some kind of tech refugee caravan, and honestly, that's not too far from the truth. We're all unemployed now, thanks to my brilliant decision to mentor people with actual spines instead of yes-men who'd sell their own mothers for a corner office. The parking garage echoes with our footsteps, each click bouncing off concrete walls that suddenly feel more like prison bars than just structural support. 15 of the best engineers in Silicon Valley, and we're all walking to our cars like we just got kicked out of the cool kids table. Except in this case, the cool kids table was run by someone who probably thinks HTML is a vitamin supplement. I reach my car, a sensible Honda Civic that's about as flashy as a paper bag, but gets me from point A to point B without making me look like I'm compensating for something. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm driving a car worth less than Claudia's monthly shoe budget while she sits up there in her executive suite, probably already planning her victory lap around the office. Gripping the steering wheel, I can feel the leather worn smooth from 6 years of commuting to a job that just became past tense faster than a trending hashtag. The humiliation isn't just sitting on me anymore. It's pressing down like I'm trapped under one of those hydraulic presses you see on YouTube, except instead of crushing random objects, it's crushing my entire sense of professional identity. My phone starts buzzing like an angry bee trapped in a mason jar. Text after text, call after call, the digital avalanche of panic that happens when 15 highly skilled engineers suddenly find themselves on the wrong side of a corporate coup. Logan's the first to break through the noise. "Dude, what the hell just happened? Are we screwed?" His message has that particular blend of millennial anxiety and professional terror that I'm feeling in my bones right about now. Pri is right behind him. They locked us out of everything. Can't access the servers, can't get into the code repositories, can't even log into Slack. It's like we never existed. The digital equivalent of being erased from history, courtesy of IT, probably getting the fastest work order of their careers. I bet they were just waiting for this moment, fingers hovering over the delete buttons like they were playing the world's most boring video game. Dylan chimes in with his usual paranoid precision. They've already changed all the security protocols. Whatever access we had is gone. Question is, what's our move? Leave it to our security expert to cut straight to the heart of the matter while the rest of us are still processing the emotional whiplash. The messages keep flooding in, each one a little digital knife twist reminding me that I'm not just unemployed. I'm responsible for 14 other people who trusted me enough to follow me off this corporate cliff. The weight of that responsibility sits in my stomach like bad gas station sushi, churning and uncomfortable and impossible to ignore. But here's the thing that Claudia doesn't know. The beautiful little secret that's keeping me from having a complete mental breakdown in a parking garage that smells like exhaust fumes and broken dreams. 2 years ago, when the company was going through those belt-tightening measures that basically translated to fire everyone who isn't related to someone important, I got paranoid. And when engineers get paranoid, we don't just worry, we plan. I created Redline Systems, my own little legal entity that exists in the wonderful gray area between personal project and corporate asset. It was supposed to be insurance, a way to protect the work I was pouring my soul into from the kind of corporate shuffle that just happened upstairs. The patent for the modular platform. You know, the system that basically runs everything Apex Nova does and makes them millions of dollars, technically belongs to me. Not the company. Not Claudia. Not even the board of directors who probably couldn't explain what the platform does if their stock options depended on it. Me. Little old me, sitting in a Honda Civic in a parking garage, shaking like a chihuahua in a thunderstorm, but holding the keys to the entire kingdom. The clause is buried so deep in the legal paperwork that it would take a team of lawyers with magnifying glasses and way too much time on their hands to find it. But it's there, clear as day once you know where to look. In the event of termination or leadership removal, all rights revert to the original architect. I wrote it myself, had Harold's team review it when he was too busy to pay attention, and got it signed off on like it was just another boring piece of corporate housekeeping. They didn't fire me. They just activated my escape hatch. I'm still shaking, but it's not just from rage anymore. There's this clarity cutting through the emotional fog like a lighthouse beam through a storm. Claudia thinks she's won. She thinks that little boardroom theater was her moment of triumph, her chance to finally put the arrogant engineer in his place and show everyone who's really in charge. What she doesn't realize is that she just handed me the nuclear option on a silver platter. My phone buzzes again. This time it's a group chat that Logan must have set up. The messages are flying fast and furious now, a mix of panic, anger, and that particular brand of dark humor that engineers use to cope with disaster. Well, this sucks, Sarah contributes helpfully. Anyone know a good unemployment lawyer? Adds Marcus, our newest team member, who probably never expected his first week to include a mass resignation. But underneath the jokes and the justified freaking out, there's something else. These people didn't just follow me out of that boardroom because they were feeling sentimental. They walked away from steady paychecks and health insurance and 401k matching because they knew something that Claudia never figured out. The real value isn't in the corner office or the fancy title. It's in the work and the people who actually do it. Sitting here in this concrete tomb of a parking garage, watching my breath fog up the windows while my former colleagues probably scramble to figure out how to keep the lights on without us, I'm starting to realize something important. This isn't the end of my career. This isn't the moment where I slink away with my tail between my legs and spend the next 6 months crying into my coffee while I update my LinkedIn profile. This is the moment where I stop playing defense and start playing offense. And Claudia, sweet, overconfident Claudia, just gave me everything I need to turn this corporate coup into the biggest mistake of her very short CEO career. My apartment tonight looks like a cross between a law library and the aftermath of a tornado hitting a FedEx store. Papers are scattered across every flat surface like confetti from the world's most boring party, and I've got binders stacked so high they're starting to look like the Leaning Tower of legal documentation. My coffee table has disappeared under a mountain of contracts, patent filings, and incorporation documents that I probably should have organized better when I wasn't running on pure spite and Red Bull. The couch is buried under folders labeled with the kind of mind-numbing corporate speak that makes your eyes glaze over. Intellectual property transfer agreements, technology licensing provisions, executive termination protocols. You know, light bedtime reading that most people use to cure insomnia, but tonight it's my ammunition. Every page, every clause, every boring legal subsection is a weapon in what's about to become the most satisfying corporate war in Silicon Valley history. I keep replaying that moment in the boardroom, watching it loop in my head like a bad YouTube video that somehow keeps getting more entertaining with each viewing. Claudia's smug expression, that practiced little smile, she probably rehearsed in the mirror while imagining her moment of triumph. The way she snapped that folder like she was conducting some kind of sadistic orchestra, all dramatic flair and zero substance. Classic Claudia, all theater, no actual understanding of what she was dealing with. Then there's Marcus Hale, the COO who's been whispering in her ear like some discount corporate Iago. The guy who nods along to everything she says with the enthusiasm of a bobblehead doll in an earthquake. I can picture him right now, probably in her office, both of them congratulating themselves on their brilliant strategic move while completely missing the fact that they just stepped on the biggest landmine in corporate legal history. The other directors were perfect too, sitting there like deer caught in headlights, probably calculating how quickly they could distance themselves from this mess once it all goes sideways. Sarah from marketing looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and hibernate until the whole thing blew over. Can't blame her. Watching someone get professionally executed in 4K HD isn't exactly what you sign up for when you take a marketing job. But Harold Green, now that was the moment that really makes me smile. Our usually stoic legal director turning whiter than a Supreme Court judge's wig when reality started knocking on his door. The man who approved every single one of these contracts without bothering to read the fine print suddenly realizing that maybe, just maybe, he should have paid closer attention to what he was signing off on. I pull out the document that's going to change everything, the incorporation papers for Redline Systems, dated exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days ago. Back when Apex Nova was going through their restructuring phase, which is corporate speak for firing people to make the quarterly numbers look prettier. I remember that week clearly, watching good engineers get walked out like they were criminals instead of the people who built the company from the ground up. That's when the paranoia kicked in, and thank God for engineer paranoia, because it's about to pay off bigger than Bitcoin in 2017. I spent 3 weeks researching corporate law, intellectual property rights, and termination clauses until my eyes were bloodshot and my brain felt like it had been through a legal blender. Most people would call it overkill. I call it preparation. The clause is right there in black and white, buried on page 47 of a 60-page document that most people would use as a doorstop. In the event of termination or leadership removal, all rights revert to the original architect. 12 words that just became the most expensive sentence in Apex Nova's history. 12 words that Claudia probably never even knew existed. Because why would she bother reading the contracts when she can just trust that her brilliant leadership instincts will carry her through? My hands are still trembling as I trace the words with my finger, but it's not fear anymore. It's the kind of shaking you get when you're trying not to laugh during a funeral. Inappropriate, but impossible to suppress. The exhaustion is hitting me too, that bone-deep tiredness that comes from having your entire world flipped upside down in the span of a 5-minute meeting. But underneath the fatigue, there's something else burning bright and hot. Pure, concentrated resolve. I spread out the patent documentation next, each page a testament to countless late nights, weekend debugging sessions, and the kind of obsessive problem-solving that drives normal people crazy but makes engineers feel alive. The modular platform isn't just some abstract corporate asset, it's my baby. Every line of code, every architectural decision, every elegant solution to impossible problems came from my brain and my determination to build something that actually worked instead of just looking good in PowerPoint presentations. Claudia thinks she's the CEO of a tech company, but she's really just the caretaker of a house of cards that I built and can tear down whenever I feel like it. She's sitting up there in her executive suite, probably already planning her next board presentation about innovative leadership transitions and strategic workforce optimization, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire empire is built on intellectual property that belongs to someone she just publicly humiliated. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a laser cutter. She fired me to consolidate her power, to show everyone who's really in charge, to make an example out of the arrogant engineer who dared to question her authority. Instead, she just gave me back complete control over the one thing that makes Apex Nova valuable. Without my platform, they're not a cutting-edge tech company. They're just another group of suits sitting around a conference table, trying to figure out why their computers aren't working. I lean back in my chair, surveying my war room of legal documents and patent filings, feeling like a general planning the decisive battle of a campaign that the enemy, doesn't even know they're fighting. Claudia may have the CEO title, the corner office, and the company credit card, but I've got something better. The keys to the kingdom and the legal right to use them however I want. She wants to play corporate hardball? Fine. But she's about to learn that when you mess with an engineer's life's work, you better make sure you actually own what you think you're stealing. And as it turns out, she doesn't own squat. My loft has been transformed into something that looks like a cross between a tech startup and a support group meeting. Except instead of folding chairs in a circle, we've got laptops balanced on pizza boxes and energy drink cans serving as impromptu paperweights. Within 3 days of our dramatic exit from corporate paradise, my living space has become headquarters for what I'm starting to think of as the resistance. 15 of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley, all crammed into my converted warehouse space that suddenly feels a lot smaller than it did when it was just me and my commitment issues. Logan set up shop on my kitchen counter, his dual monitors making my breakfast bar look like mission control at NASA. The kid's got this intense focus that reminds me why I hired him straight out of MIT, back when he was so nervous about his first day that he showed up 40 minutes early and waited in the parking lot practicing his introduction. Now he's routing network traffic like he's conducting a symphony, fingers flying across the keyboard with the kind of precision that makes me proud and slightly jealous. Priya's claimed the dining table, not that I was using it for actual dining anyway, and turned it into a database command center that looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. She's got 3 laptops running simultaneously, each one connected to external drives that are humming with the kind of quiet efficiency that tells you serious work is happening. The woman who once told me she became a database engineer because data doesn't lie to you or steal your lunch from the office fridge is now orchestrating what amounts to a digital exodus from our former corporate overlords. Dylan's positioned himself near the window because, of course, our security expert wants clear sight lines and easy escape routes. The man treats cybersecurity like it's a contact sport, and watching him work is like observing a chess grandmaster who's thinking 12 moves ahead while everyone else is still trying to figure out which piece is the horsey. He's got his laptop fortress set up with more privacy screens and security dongles than a paranoid dictator's bunker. The others have spread out wherever they could find space. Sarah's got her UI design set up on my coffee table. Marcus is debugging code while sitting cross-legged on the floor like some kind of programming guru, and Jason, our youngest team member and official intern, has somehow managed to turn my bookshelf into a workstation. The kid's barely old enough to drink legally, but he's got this sharp eye for detail that keeps surprising all of us old-timers who thought we'd seen everything. We're like a family of refugees, except instead of fleeing war zones, we're escaping corporate incompetence and nepotism. The bond between us has gotten fierce over these past few days, forged in the fires of shared unemployment and mutual disbelief at what just happened to our careers. We laugh bitterly about Claudia's management style, her obsession with looking good in tech magazines, and her apparent belief that running a company is basically the same as hosting a really expensive dinner party. Did you see her LinkedIn post? Sarah calls out, not looking up from her screen. She's calling it a strategic realignment of human capital resources. I threw up a little in my mouth when I read that. Human capital resources? Dylan snorts. Is that what we're calling people now? What's next? Referring to customers as revenue generation units. The group chat we've got going is a constant stream of screenshots from former colleagues still trapped inside Apex Nova, each one painting a picture of increasing chaos and confusion. Apparently, Claudia's been holding daily meetings trying to figure out why none of the systems are working properly, while Marcus Hale nods along and suggests they leverage synergistic solutions to optimize productivity metrics. Translation: they have no idea what they're doing, but they're using enough buzzwords to sound like they do. Jason suddenly perks up from his corner, holding up a printed contract like he's discovered the Holy Grail. "Hey, check this out," he says, his voice cracking slightly with excitement. "I've been going through the licensing agreements, and there's some weird language in here about third-party integrations." We all turn to look at him, and I can see that spark in his eyes that every engineer gets when they spot something everyone else missed. The kid might be young, but he's got that particular brand of obsessive attention to detail that turns good engineers into great ones. "What kind of weird language?" I ask, making my way over to peer at the document. Jason's highlighted several clauses in neon yellow, and as I read them, I can feel my grin spreading like spilled coffee on white paper. Look at this, he says, pointing to a section buried in the middle of page 12. All third-party integrations require ongoing certification from the original development team. Without that certification, the licenses automatically expire after 30 days. The room goes quiet except for the humming of laptops and the distant sound of traffic outside. Everyone's staring at Jason like he just announced he'd figured out cold fusion using household appliances. 30 days, Priya repeats slowly. And when did we leave? 4 days ago, Logan answers immediately. So in 26 days. Dylan starts. Every single partnership integration goes dark. I finish. Banking systems, customer databases, third-party APIs, cloud services, everything that makes Apex Nova actually functional instead of just a pretty website. The laughter that erupts from our makeshift war room probably violates several noise ordinances, but I don't care. Watching these brilliant people, my people, dig through legal documents like they're hunting for Easter eggs is better than any corporate team-building exercise ever invented. This is what happens when you take engineers who actually understand the technology and give them a reason to use their powers for something more interesting than debugging someone else's terrible code. Claudia thinks she's running a tech company, Marcus says, grinning while he pulls up what looks like a network architecture diagram. But she's actually just babysitting a very expensive countdown timer. 26 days, Sarah muses. Thinks she'll figure it out before then. Are we talking about the same woman who once asked if we could download more RAM for the servers? Dylan asks. The bond between us isn't just professional anymore. It's personal. We're not just former colleagues. We're a crew of brilliant misfits who've been abandoned by people who don't understand the first thing about the empire we built for them. But here's the beautiful part. They need us way more than we need them. And in 26 days, they're going to figure that out the hard way. 9 days. That's all it took for Claudia to go from firing me in front of the entire executive team to standing on a stage like some kind of tech messiah, ready to prove to a room full of investors that she's got everything under control. I'm watching this whole circus unfold from my couch, laptop balanced on my knees, connected to a Slack back channel that's basically become the digital equivalent of watching a car crash in slow motion. Horrible, but impossible to look away from. The venue is the Marriott downtown, one of those soulless conference rooms with beige walls and carpet that probably hasn't been updated since the Clinton administration. But Claudia's dressed it up with all the corporate theater money can buy. Massive screens, professional lighting, and enough branded banners to make a NASCAR driver jealous. She's even got one of those wireless presenter remotes that she keeps clicking dramatically, like she's casting spells instead of advancing PowerPoint slides. My team's scattered around my loft, but we're all watching the same live stream, typing commentary faster than a Twitter mob during a celebrity scandal. Logan's providing real-time analysis of her technical claims, which is basically him saying, that's not how any of this works, in increasingly creative ways. Priya is tracking the audience reactions, noting how many people are checking their phones instead of paying attention. Dylan's just eating popcorn and occasionally typing, this is fine, with crying laughing emojis. Ladies and gentlemen, Claudia begins, her voice carrying that practiced confidence of someone who's watched way too many TED Talks. Today marks a new era of innovation under my leadership at Apex Nova. She's wearing a power suit that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent, and she's got her hair styled in that severe corporate bob that screams, I'd like to speak to your manager's manager. The investors are sitting there in their standard-issue venture capitalist uniforms, blazers that cost 4 figures, watches that cost 5 figures, and expressions that suggest they're mentally calculating how quickly they can dump their shares if this goes sideways. There's probably $50 million worth of checkbooks in that room, and Claudia is about to give them a front-row seat to the most expensive technical difficulties in Silicon Valley history. Our modular platform represents the future of enterprise solutions, she continues, clicking through slides that I recognize as slightly modified versions of presentations I gave 6 months ago. The irony is so thick you could pour it over pancakes. She's literally using my work to convince people that she's innovating beyond my capabilities, like a cover band claiming they're better than the original artist. Sarah types in our chat. Is she seriously taking credit for the entire platform architecture? followed by about 20 eye roll emojis. Marcus adds, she probably thinks APIs are a type of vitamin supplement. The technical demo is supposed to be the grand finale, the moment where Claudia shows off the platform's capabilities and proves that Apex Nova is still the cutting-edge company it was when I was running the technical side. She builds up to it like a magician about to perform their signature trick, talking about seamless integration, robust architecture, and revolutionary user experience. All the buzzwords are there, delivered with the kind of confidence that only comes from having absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Now, let me demonstrate our platform's capabilities, she says, turning toward the massive display screen with a flourish that would make a game show host proud. The audience leans forward slightly. This is what they came to see. This is the moment where the rubber meets the road and all those fancy slides turn into actual, functional technology. She clicks the remote. The screen flickers for a moment, showing a loading icon that spins exactly 3 times before freezing completely. Then, in letters large enough to be seen from space, appears the message that's about to turn this investor presentation into the corporate equivalent of the Hindenburg disaster. License authorization expired. The silence that follows is the kind of quiet you get right before a tornado hits, when even the birds stop singing because they know something terrible is about to happen. Claudia stares at the screen like it personally betrayed her, her finger hovering over the remote like maybe if she clicks it hard enough, the laws of software licensing will bend to her will. Technical difficulties, she says with a laugh that sounds about as natural as a robot trying to tell a knock-knock joke. These things happen in live demos. She clicks the remote again. The message doesn't change. If anything, it seems to be mocking her with its complete and utter refusal to do anything productive. The investors start shifting in their seats, that subtle movement of people who are beginning to wonder if they should have stayed home and watched Netflix instead. A few whispered conversations break out, the kind of urgent, low-volume discussions that happen when people realize they might be watching someone's career implode in real time. Minutes stretch by like hours in a dentist's waiting room. Claudia's forced smile is starting to crack around the edges, and she keeps clicking that remote like it's a magic wand that's temporarily out of magic. Behind her, the error message sits there with all the stubborn persistence of a teenager refusing to clean their room. Are we experiencing some kind of system failure? Someone from the back calls out, and I recognize the voice of Tom Patterson from Meridian Ventures, a guy who's probably forgotten more about tech investments than Claudia will ever know. That's when Ellen Meyer, the director of operations, makes what might be the most catastrophically honest statement of her career. She stands up from her seat in the front row, her face pale as printer paper, and blurts out, "Are we saying we've lost control of the platform?" The room erupts in whispers faster than gossip at a high school reunion. Investors are suddenly very interested in their phones, probably calling their assistants to schedule emergency meetings about damage control. A few of them are already standing up, the universal signal for, "I have somewhere else I need to be immediately." Claudia's mask is cracking like old paint in an earthquake. That smug confidence she wore like armor is melting away, revealing the panic underneath. She's clicking the remote frantically now, like she's playing the world's most expensive arcade game and losing badly. From my couch, surrounded by my team of brilliant engineers who saw this coming from a mile away, I lean back and cross my arms. The quiet burn of vindication is spreading through my chest like really good whiskey, warm and satisfying and absolutely perfect. Should we send them a troubleshooting guide? Jason asks innocently. Nah. I reply, watching Claudia's presentation turn into a masterclass in public humiliation. They've got this. The phone rings at exactly 9:47 a.m. the next morning, interrupting what was shaping up to be a perfectly peaceful breakfast of leftover Chinese takeout and the kind of schadenfreude that pairs beautifully with morning coffee. I don't even need to check the caller ID. There's only one reason anyone from Apex Nova would be calling me less than 24 hours after their public tech demo turned into a digital dumpster fire visible from orbit. "Good morning," comes the voice of Sylvia Kent, HR Director and Professional Damage Control Specialist, her tone carrying that particular brand of corporate cheerfulness that sounds like it was manufactured in a lab somewhere. Sylvia is one of those HR people who probably has motivational posters in her office and genuinely believes that every workplace conflict can be solved with a trust fall, and some team-building exercises involving blindfolds and rope courses. I can practically hear the script in her voice, the carefully rehearsed lines that some crisis management consultant probably charged them 50 grand to write. I hope you're doing well, she continues, which is corporate speak for please don't sue us into oblivion, followed by, I was wondering if you might have a few minutes to chat about some exciting opportunities. Exciting opportunities. That's what they're calling it now. Not, please come back and fix the mess we made. Not, we realize we screwed up monumentally. But exciting opportunities like this is some kind of career advancement instead of an emergency rescue mission for a company that's currently circling the drain faster than a flushed goldfish. Sylvia, I say, settling back into my couch with the phone balanced between my ear and shoulder so I can keep typing updates to the team chat. What can I do for you? I'm going for casual politeness, the kind of tone you use when you're talking to someone who's about to offer you something you absolutely don't need, but might find entertaining to hear about. Well, she says, and I can hear the sound of papers shuffling in the background, probably consulting her notes on how to handle difficult former employees or terminated staff with leverage or whatever euphemism they're using for the guy who owns the thing that makes our company work. We've been doing some strategic thinking about our recent organizational changes, and we'd love to explore opportunities for you to return to the team. Return to the team. Like I left voluntarily to pursue other interests instead of getting fired in front of the entire executive staff in what amounted to a corporate public execution. The revisionist history is almost impressive in its audacity. They've managed to reframe their massive screw-up as a mutual parting of ways that everyone's now reconsidering. The board has authorized me to offer you a significant compensation package, Sylvia continues, her voice getting a little more urgent around the edges. We're talking about a substantial salary increase, performance bonuses, stock options, and of course, a public acknowledgement of your valuable contributions to the company. A public acknowledgement. Translation. Claudia would have to stand up in front of everyone and admit she made a mistake, which would be about as likely as finding a unicorn in the office break room, making coffee, and discussing quarterly projections. But the fact that they're even floating this idea means they're more desperate than a teenager trying to get their phone back after their parents confiscated it. I can picture the scene right now. Claudia pacing around her corner office like a caged tiger, probably wearing a path in that expensive carpet, while Marcus Hale sits there nodding and suggesting they leverage human resources to optimize operational efficiency. Meanwhile, the board members are probably having emergency conference calls at ungodly hours, watching their investment turn into the corporate equivalent of the Titanic, complete with its own iceberg made of intellectual property law. That's very generous, I say, taking a sip of coffee and watching Logan across the room mock-type frantically while Priya makes exaggerated panicked facial expressions. The whole team's listening to my side of this conversation with the kind of anticipation you usually see at sporting events right before the winning goal. What kind of timeline are we talking about here? Well, we'd love to have you back as soon as possible, Sylvia replies. And there it is, the barely concealed desperation bleeding through her professional facade like water through a cracked dam. The sooner we can restore operational continuity, the better it would be for everyone involved. Operational continuity. Corporate speak for, our fancy computer systems are currently about as useful as a chocolate teapot, and we need you to come back and make them work again before our investors realize they've been funding the world's most expensive practical joke. I appreciate the offer, I tell her, letting the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. But I'm curious about something. What exactly do you think I'd be coming back to fix? There's a pause that lasts about 3 seconds too long, the kind of silence that happens when someone realizes they've walked into a conversational minefield while wearing tap shoes. Well, there have been some minor technical issues since the organizational restructuring, she says finally, using the kind of careful language that diplomats use when they're trying not to start wars. Minor technical issues, like calling the sinking of the Titanic a minor navigational inconvenience, or describing a nuclear meltdown as unplanned thermal expansion. Sylvia, I say, and now I'm not bothering to hide the amusement in my voice. Let me save us both some time here. You don't have enough money to buy back the truth, and you definitely don't have enough to buy my silence. The silence that follows is the sound of a corporate script dying a painful death in real time. I can almost hear her frantically flipping through her crisis management handbook, looking for the chapter on what to do when the fired employee isn't desperate enough to fall for your damage control efforts. "I'm not sure I understand," she says, but her voice has lost that artificial cheerfulness and now sounds like someone who's just realized they brought a knife to a gunfight. "Here's what I understand," I reply, standing up and walking to the window where I can see the city spread out below, full of companies that actually know how to treat their employees like human beings instead of disposable resources. "You fired me in front of the entire executive team to make a point about who's in charge. Now you want me to come crawling back and pretend it never happened." For the first time since this whole corporate soap opera started, I feel something that isn't anger or hurt or the burning desire for revenge. It's clarity, pure and simple and more refreshing than an ice-cold beer on a hot summer day. Power isn't about sitting in the CEO's chair or having your name on the company directory. Power is being able to say no when people who treated you like garbage suddenly need something from you. The answer is no, Sylvia. Not for any amount of money, not for any title, not for any public apology. Some bridges don't just get burned, they get nuked from orbit. The email lands in my inbox 2 days later like a digital bombshell disguised as routine correspondence, sitting there between a spam message about enlarging various body parts and a newsletter from some tech blog I apparently subscribed to in a moment of weakness. The sender's name makes me do a double take. Chris Dalton, Senior Engineering Director at Orion Dynamics. You know, the same Chris Dalton who used to work 3 cubes down from me before Claudia decided he was redundant during one of her brilliant cost-cutting initiatives about 18 months ago. The subject line is beautifully understated. Coffee and conversation? Like we're old college buddies catching up instead of 2 engineers who just watched our former employer implode in spectacular fashion. But I know Chris well enough to recognize his style. The man treats corporate communication like a chess match, and every move is calculated 3 steps ahead. His message is short and sweet. "Saw the news about your departure from Apex Nova. Would love to catch up over coffee and discuss some interesting opportunities. Are you free tomorrow afternoon?" No mention of the demo disaster that's probably still trending on LinkedIn. No reference to the fact that Claudia just publicly humiliated herself in front of half the investment community. Just a polite invitation that could mean absolutely nothing or absolutely everything. Chris Dalton is the kind of engineer who makes other engineers slightly uncomfortable, not because he's not brilliant. He absolutely is. But because he combines technical genius with the kind of political savvy that most of us gave up trying to develop around the time we realized that understanding people is way harder than understanding code. When Claudia fired him, she claimed it was about streamlining operations and eliminating redundancy, but everyone knew the real reason. Chris had started asking uncomfortable questions about her qualifications during board meetings. The cafe, he suggests, is one of those aggressively neutral places that corporate types love for sensitive conversations. Enough ambient noise to prevent eavesdropping, generic enough decor that nobody remembers being there, and coffee strong enough to keep you alert while someone tries to change your entire career trajectory. I show up 15 minutes early because that's what engineers do, and spend the time people watching while mentally preparing for whatever corporate chess match is about to unfold. Chris arrives exactly on time, because of course he does. The man's wearing a casual blazer over dark jeans, that perfect balance of, I'm successful but not pretentious, that probably took him 20 minutes to achieve. His haircut costs more than most people spend on groceries, but he's got the kind of easy confidence that makes expensive grooming look effortless instead of trying hard. "You look good for someone who just got publicly executed," he says with a grin, sliding into the booth across from me. Classic Chris, get the elephant in the room out in the open immediately, but wrap it in just enough humor to keep things from getting awkward. "Thanks," I reply, stirring my coffee even though it doesn't need stirring. "You look good for someone who's been plotting corporate espionage for the last 18 months. He laughs, the kind of genuine laugh that tells you he's enjoying this conversation already. Is it really espionage if they're imploding all on their own? Because from where I'm sitting, Apex Nova is doing a pretty spectacular job of self-destructing without any help from outside forces. We spend the first 10 minutes on pleasantries and catching up, the usual dance of 2 people who are both pretending this is a casual social call instead of a business meeting disguised as friendship. He tells me about Orion Dynamics, how they've been growing like crazy, how the culture is everything Apex Nova pretended to be but never actually achieved. I tell him about my team, how 15 of Apex Nova's best engineers followed me out the door, how we're currently operating out of my loft like some kind of corporate resistance movement. Then Chris slides his tablet across the table, and suddenly we're not catching up anymore. We're negotiating. The document on the screen is a patent analysis, and I recognize my own work staring back at me with surgical precision. Every clause of the Redline Systems Incorporation is highlighted. Every legal protection I built into the modular platform is outlined in detail. Every potential vulnerability in Claudia's position is mapped out like a military strategy guide. Without you, it's just a shell, he says, his voice dropping to the kind of confidential tone that means we've officially entered serious business territory. Everyone in the industry knows it. The platform architecture, the integration protocols, the licensing framework, that's all your work. Claudia's just the person who happened to be sitting in the big chair when everything fell apart. I stare at the analysis, impressed despite myself. This isn't the work of someone who threw together a presentation over the weekend. This is months of research, legal review, and strategic planning. Chris and his team at Orion have been watching Apex Nova's situation unfold with the kind of patience that predators show when they're stalking wounded prey. We'd like to make you an offer, he continues, tapping the screen to bring up a new document. The number at the top makes my coffee taste suddenly bitter, not because it's bad, but because it's so overwhelmingly good that I can't quite process it. $1.1 billion for the complete patent portfolio, plus equity in Orion and a guaranteed position leading our new Advanced Systems division. $1.1 billion. The kind of money that turns people into their own Wikipedia entries. The kind of money that buys you the freedom to never have to sit through another corporate budget meeting or pretend to care about quarterly projections ever again. The kind of money that would let me fund my own research projects, hire whoever I want, build whatever I can imagine without having to justify every decision to people who think innovation means adding a new font to the company website. But here's the thing about rivalries in Silicon Valley. They're not about friendship or professional courtesy or mutual respect. They're about leverage, pure and simple. Orion doesn't want to give me $1 billion because they like me or because they think I deserve it after what Claudia did. They want to buy my patent because it would give them a devastating advantage over Apex Nova and every other competitor in the market. That's a very generous offer, I say, meaning every word of it. For the first time since this whole corporate drama started, someone is actually acknowledging what my work is worth instead of treating it like an inconvenient detail in their power games. My pulse is quickening, and I can feel that familiar engineering excitement that comes with solving impossible problems or seeing elegant solutions unfold in real time. But there's something else mixed in with the adrenaline, a nagging awareness that Chris isn't doing this out of the goodness of his heart. Rivals don't make billion-dollar offers because they want to help you achieve your dreams. They make billion-dollar offers because they want to win, and they've calculated that buying your victory is cheaper than earning it themselves. The morning after my coffee with Chris, I wake up to find the tech news cycle spinning like a washing machine on steroids. Claudia's managed to feed the press a story that would make a Hollywood publicist proud. Apparently, she's somehow restored the system that crashed during her investor demo. The headlines are rolling across my phone screen like a parade of corporate fiction. Apex Nova CEO overcomes technical challenges, quick recovery shows strong leadership, and my personal favorite, system restoration demonstrates resilient architecture. Resilient architecture? That's rich, considering the architecture in question is currently about as stable as a house of cards in a wind tunnel. But hey, never let facts get in the way of a good PR campaign. I'm scrolling through these masterpieces of creative writing while my coffee brews, and I have to admit, Claudia's media game is stronger than I gave her credit for. She's managed to spin a catastrophic system failure into a story about innovative problem-solving and dynamic leadership. The woman who couldn't figure out how to unmute herself during Zoom calls is now being portrayed as some kind of tech visionary who can fix critical infrastructure with the power of positive thinking and expensive consultants. The team starts trickling into my loft around 9, each one of them looking like they've seen the same headlines and had the same reaction I did. Logan walks in shaking his head, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, and an expression that suggests he's questioning the fundamental nature of reality. "Please tell me you saw the news," he says, dropping into his usual spot at the kitchen counter. "Please tell me I'm not living in some kind of alternate universe where system crashes magically fix themselves overnight." Priya's right behind him, already pulling up her laptop and diving into the technical details that the press release conveniently ignored. "I've been monitoring the network traffic," she says, fingers flying across her keyboard with the kind of focused intensity that means she's found something interesting. "The system came back online around 3 a.m., but the traffic patterns are all wrong. It's like they patched something together with digital duct tape and hope." Dylan settles in by the window, his paranoid security expert instincts on full alert. "I'm betting they brought in some expensive crisis management firm and threw money at the problem until it went away temporarily. Classic corporate move. Buy yourself time to figure out a real solution later." The group chat from our former colleagues still inside Apex Nova is lighting up like a Christmas tree, each message painting a picture of barely controlled chaos disguised as business as usual. Apparently, Claudia's been holding marathon meetings every day, bringing in outside consultants who charge more per hour than most people make in a month, all of them trying to figure out how to make the platform work without understanding what makes it tick in the first place. She's been telling everyone that the system issues were caused by legacy code conflicts. Sarah reports from her corner of the room, reading from her phone. Translation: she has no idea what went wrong, but it sounds technical enough that most people won't ask follow-up questions. For about 24 hours, it looks like Claudia might actually pull this off. The board seems to buy her explanation, investors start calling back to reschedule meetings, and even some of our former teammates are texting to ask if maybe we overreacted to the whole situation. The illusion is so convincing that I start wondering if maybe I missed something. If perhaps there was some backup system or redundancy that I forgot about in all the chaos. Then Jason, our resident intern and apparently the most thorough researcher in Silicon Valley, looks up from his laptop with the kind of expression that means he's about to drop a bombshell that's going to change everything. "Guys," he says, voice cracking slightly with excitement and disbelief, "I've been monitoring their system status, and something's not right. The restoration they're claiming? It's not actually a restoration." We all turn to look at him, and I can see that spark in his eyes that every engineer gets when they've discovered something that nobody else noticed. The kid's got his laptop connected to 2 external monitors, displaying what looks like network monitoring tools that would make the NSA jealous. "Look at this," he continues, pointing to a series of graphs that mean absolutely nothing to normal people, but tell a very specific story to anyone who understands system architecture. They've got basic functionality running, but it's all surface-level stuff. The core integration protocols, the database synchronization, the API management, none of that is actually working. They've basically created a very expensive screensaver that looks like a functioning system. The room goes quiet except for the humming of laptops and the distant sound of traffic outside. Everyone's staring at Jason's monitors like they're displaying the secrets of the universe, which in a way, they kind of are. "How long can they maintain this?" Priya asks, and I can hear the anticipation in her voice. "Based on the error logs I'm seeing," Jason grins, "maybe another day, 2 at most. Then everything's going to cascade failure faster than a house of cards in an earthquake." And that's exactly what happens. Within 24 hours, the digital duct tape and hope solution that Claudia's expensive consultants cobbled together starts falling apart like a cheap umbrella in a hurricane. It's not a gradual decline. It's a complete, spectacular, impossible-to-ignore meltdown that makes their original demo disaster look like a minor hiccup. The system doesn't just crash, it implodes. Customer databases go offline, partner integrations fail simultaneously, and the entire platform architecture collapses like a controlled demolition, except nobody's in control and everyone's panicking. The alerts start flooding in faster than my team can track them, each one representing another critical system going dark. Within hours, the headlines change from praising Claudia's leadership to questioning everything about Apex Nova's stability. Partners start calling emergency meetings, customers begin demanding explanations, and investors who were ready to write checks yesterday are now calling their lawyers. In the boardroom, the same room where Claudia fired me with such dramatic flair, the directors are starting to look like they're attending their own funeral. Harold Green, the legal director who approved all my contracts without reading them, slams his binder shut with the kind of finality that signals the end of an era. "You misled us," he tells Claudia, his voice carrying the weight of someone who's just realized they've been played. This wasn't restoration, it was theater. From my loft, surrounded by my team of brilliant engineers who saw this coming from day one, I watched Claudia's carefully constructed illusion crumble like a sand castle at high tide. The woman who wanted to prove she could run a tech company without understanding technology is about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between leadership and showmanship. The summons comes via email at exactly 2:17 p.m. on a Thursday, delivered with the kind of corporate urgency that screams, "We're drowning, and you're the only one with a life preserver." Harold Green's assistant sends it, a formal request for an emergency consultation meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. As if this is some routine business discussion instead of a desperate Hail Mary from a company that's currently experiencing what can only be described as a controlled corporate demolition. The language is beautifully crafted to sound official and important while completely avoiding any admission of guilt or desperation. The board of directors cordially requests your presence to discuss potential collaboration opportunities and strategic partnership arrangements. Translation: please come save us before we become a cautionary tale that business schools use to teach students about the dangers of nepotism and incompetence. I spend the evening preparing like a general before the decisive battle of a war that the enemy doesn't even realize they've already lost. My folder contains every document, every contract, every legal filing that's about to turn this consultation meeting into the most expensive education in intellectual property law that the Apex Nova board has ever received. The patent documentation, the redline systems incorporation papers, the licensing agreements, it's all there, organized with the kind of obsessive attention to detail that makes engineers feel comfortable and corporate executives break out in cold sweats. The walk back through the Apex Nova lobby the next morning feels like returning to a crime scene. Except this time, I'm not the victim. I'm the detective who's about to solve the case in front of everyone who thought they got away with murder. The security guard who used to nod politely when I badged in every morning now watches me like I'm some kind of celebrity, probably wondering if he should ask for an autograph or call for backup. The elevator ride to the executive floor gives me 60 seconds to appreciate the irony of the situation. 3 weeks ago, I was escorted out of this building like a criminal, carrying a cardboard box of personal items while Claudia smirked from her corner office. Now I'm riding back up as the only person who can prevent their entire corporate empire from collapsing into a pile of worthless stock certificates and broken dreams. The boardroom looks exactly the same as it did during my public execution, except now the energy is completely different. Instead of confident executives ready to watch someone get fired for their entertainment, I'm looking at a collection of pale, nervous people who've spent the last few weeks watching their investment turn into the corporate equivalent of the Titanic. The mahogany table that once seemed so intimidating now looks like what it really is, an expensive piece of furniture where desperate people are about to learn some very expensive lessons. Claudia is standing by the window, probably trying to project confidence and authority, but even from across the room, I can see the tension in her shoulders. The woman who fired me with such dramatic flair now looks like she's attending her own intervention, which, let's be honest, is basically what this meeting is about to become. The board members are arranged around the table like they're attending a funeral, which is actually pretty accurate considering they're about to watch the death of their illusions about who really runs this company. Marcus Hale sits next to Claudia, still playing the role of loyal lieutenant. But his usual nodding enthusiasm has been replaced by the kind of nervous energy that suggests he's finally figured out that blind loyalty to an incompetent leader is a career-limiting move. Harold Green looks like he hasn't slept in weeks, probably because he spent that time with teams of lawyers trying to figure out how badly they screwed up when they approved all my contracts without actually reading them. Sarah from marketing is there too, looking like she'd rather be literally anywhere else, probably calculating how quickly she can update her resume and start networking for a new job at a company that isn't imploding in slow motion. I take my seat at the table, not the same chair where I was fired, but the one directly across from Claudia, because symbolism matters and I want everyone in this room to understand exactly who's in control of this conversation. The folder containing their corporate death warrant sits in front of me like a ticking time bomb disguised as paperwork. "Thank you for coming," Harold begins, his voice carrying the kind of forced politeness that happens when lawyers realize they're about to get professionally humiliated. "We wanted to discuss the current situation and explore options for moving forward constructively." Moving forward constructively. Corporate speak for, "We're completely screwed and we need you to fix it, but we're going to pretend this is a negotiation between equals instead of a hostage situation where we're the hostages." They expect me to play the game, to dance around the obvious truth and engage in the kind of diplomatic double talk that allows everyone to save face while pretending that what happened 3 weeks ago was just a minor misunderstanding between colleagues. They expect me to be grateful for the opportunity to return, to accept whatever terms they offer, and to quietly go back to making their company work while they take credit for the innovation. Instead, I open my folder and lay out the documents that are about to change everything. "I appreciate the invitation," I say, my voice calm and professional, "but I think there's been a misunderstanding about why I'm here. I'm not here to negotiate my return to Apex Nova. I'm not here to discuss compensation packages or job titles or any kind of collaboration arrangement." The silence that follows is the sound of corporate expectations dying in real time. I can see the confusion spreading across their faces like spilled coffee on white paper, the dawning realization that this meeting isn't going according to the script they had in mind. "I'm here to inform you that I won't be returning to this company under any circumstances. I won't be restoring your access to the platform. And I will be selling the patent portfolio to the highest bidder." The gasps that ripple around the table are music to my ears, the sound of people who thought they held all the cards suddenly realizing they've been playing with an incomplete deck. Claudia's face goes through about 6 different expressions in the span of 3 seconds, ending on something that looks like she just watched her car get repossessed on live television. "You can't do that," she shrieks, her carefully maintained professional facade finally cracking like old paint. "The patents belong to Apex Nova. You can't just steal company intellectual property." I slide the signed documents across the table, each one stamped and notarized and legally bulletproof. "Actually, I can. And I am. The patents were never transferred to Apex Nova. They belong to Redline Systems, which belongs to me. This isn't a negotiation. This isn't a consultation. This is Judgment Day, and I'm the one holding the gavel." 14 days. That's all it took for Apex Nova to go from Silicon Valley darling to corporate cautionary tale, from the company that was going to revolutionize enterprise solutions to the one that business schools will use as a textbook example of how not to handle intellectual property and personnel management. I'm watching it unfold from my loft like a slow-motion disaster movie, except instead of feeling bad for the victims, I'm eating popcorn and enjoying every single frame. The headlines scroll across my phone screen like a greatest hits compilation of corporate disasters. Patent lost. Company crumbles. Apex Nova stock plunges 78% in single day. Board forces emergency liquidation proceedings. And my personal favorite, when nepotism meets nuclear options, a Silicon Valley tragedy. The financial news channels are having a field day, with analysts calling it the fastest corporate collapse in tech industry history and a masterclass in how to destroy shareholder value in record time. The stock price chart looks like someone took a ski jump and flipped it upside down. A beautiful, steep decline that would be tragic if it weren't so completely deserved. Shareholders who were probably planning to buy new yachts with their Apex Nova dividends are now wondering if they can return their cars to get some cash back. The institutional investors who backed Claudia's leadership are suddenly very interested in discussing risk management strategies and due diligence failures with anyone who'll listen. Contracts are evaporating faster than water in Death Valley. Every partnership agreement, every licensing deal, every integration contract that made Apex Nova valuable is getting terminated with the kind of speed that suggests lawyers have been working around the clock to distance their clients from this corporate dumpster fire. It's like watching dominoes fall, except each domino represents millions of dollars in lost revenue and another nail in the company's coffin. The best part, and by best, I mean most satisfying in that dark, vindictive way that makes you question your own character but feels too good to stop, is watching the board meeting where they finally remove Claudia from her CEO position. I'm not actually in the room, obviously, but my sources inside the company. Turns out a lot of people are suddenly very eager to share information with the guy who holds all the cards. Paint a picture that's more beautiful than any Renaissance masterpiece. Apparently, she walked into that boardroom thinking she could still salvage the situation, probably armed with another PowerPoint presentation full of buzzwords and strategic initiatives that would somehow make everyone forget about the complete systemic failure of everything she touched. But instead of finding a room full of concerned colleagues ready to rally around their leader, she found a firing squad of lawyers and investors who'd been calculating exactly how much money her incompetence had cost them. The shareholders forced her out with the kind of brutal efficiency that makes corporate coups look like polite disagreements. No severance package, no golden parachute, no face-saving resignation letter about pursuing other opportunities. Just a security escort to clean out her office and a legal team making sure she doesn't walk away with anything that doesn't belong to her. The press conference is scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, and by the time it rolls around, every major news outlet in the country has sent reporters. This isn't just a tech story anymore. It's become a human interest piece about corporate karma, about what happens when arrogance meets competence and loses spectacularly. The conference room at the downtown Marriott is packed tighter than a subway car during rush hour, with cameras and microphones creating a forest of media equipment that would make a rock concert jealous. Claudia sits at the table like she's attending her own execution, which is basically what this is. The woman who used to strut around the office like she owned the world now looks hollow-eyed and defeated, her expensive power suit hanging on her like it belongs to someone else. The confident smirk that defined her entire tenure as CEO has been replaced by the kind of expression you see on people who just realize they're the punchline of a very expensive joke. Her prepared statement is a masterpiece of non-apology apologies and corporate speak that manages to take responsibility for nothing while somehow making everything sound like it was beyond her control. She talks about market volatility and unexpected technical challenges and strategic pivots, using all the buzzwords that consultants probably charged her 50 grand to come up with, but everyone in that room knows exactly what happened. She got outplayed by someone she thought she could bully, and now she's paying the price for assuming that confidence could substitute for competence. But then the cameras turn to me, and suddenly this isn't about Claudia's fall anymore. It's about what comes next. The reporters are shouting questions faster than a tobacco auctioneer on espresso, everyone wanting to know what I'm going to do with the patent portfolio that just brought down one of Silicon Valley's most prominent companies. I step up to the microphone cluster that looks like some kind of technological hydra, contract in hand, feeling the weight of every flashbulb that goes off like a small explosion. This is the moment that's going to define how this story gets told for the next decade, the soundbite that business journalists will quote in articles about corporate revenge and intellectual property law. Thank you, I say, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up, the same 2 words I whispered in that boardroom 14 days ago when Claudia thought she was humiliated me. Except this time, everyone understands exactly what I'm thanking them for. Not surrender, triumph. Not defeat, vindication. Not the end of my career, the beginning of something entirely new. The greatest revenge isn't screaming or burning bridges or making dramatic speeches about justice and karma. The greatest revenge is standing tall when they expect you to crawl, succeeding when they expect you to fail, and walking away on your own terms with your head high and your integrity intact. I'm not just walking away from Apex Nova's wreckage. I'm walking towards something better, something I built with my own hands and my own mind, something that can't be taken away by people who mistake titles for talent or authority for intelligence. The contract in my hand represents more than just a business deal. It represents proof that talent and preparation will always beat arrogance and nepotism, that the people who actually do the work will always be more valuable than the people who just talk about it. As I walk away from that press conference, leaving behind the burning ruins of Claudia's corporate empire, I'm not thinking about revenge anymore. I'm thinking about what I'm going to build next and who I'm going to build it with.